Good morning, Stacy. How are you today?
I'm so good. Good morning. So fun
Good.
here together again.
It is. It is. I love being here. We were just chatting a little bit and really wanted to talk about transitions, transition times in our lives, things that affect us in transition, and even that fear-based piece that creeps in when we're in the middle of transitions. And those transitions can be anything from changing a job to moving somewhere different to um, changing a relationship. It can be all kinds of things. When we talk about transitions and change, it's really that change that we're resistant to, that we fear.
Mhm.
And, I've worked with people prior who seem to not have any effect by what they called change. But then when we really talk about transition and transition phases, we're really impacted by that. You know, I think it has to do with if transitions happen that are somewhat beyond our control and we aren't making the decision for that transition to happen, that's when we step into a place where our fear can take over and can really infiltrate in our brain that we are super fearful over what's going to happen next. And we find ourselves almost uh, getting into a place where it can damage us to a point that we have trouble moving forward and we have trouble like getting out of the funk. And we both know when we talk about energy, being in that funk is not going to open those doors for us. And just really having this conversation, and again, not simplifying those transitions and those things that are really hard and those things that we fear, but really having this conversation in an authentic way that we all experience this and know there's not a simple answer about how you stay in that mindset that's going to produce those things for us, but really just having a conversation about it. And so I'm going to volley it over to you and let you um, add to that.
I love that introduction. I so much was go. We could go here with this, all the aspects. So we'll just one at a time with no list or structure here. That I guess I'll start with the fear that we're normalizing this. We're saying we all experience fear relative to change. So it's coming in first to bring out is so the part of us that is feeling the struggle and wants the change, it wants things to be different. Let's just use the job as an example. So we're in a job we don't like. We want a new job. And then it can feel good in the imagination to go, oh, I want this. Sometimes we don't know what we want, but for this example, let's pretend that there's something that we know we want, even if it's just what the work environment would be. You imagine it, that feels pretty good. But then when it comes to that part about taking some action, then our body's like, oh no, now we're going out of our comfort zone. Because wouldn't we all just love to not have it be challenging and all of those things and scary to move through that? But when we talk about energy, the universe, way all this works, that's not how it works. Big changes are, by definition, this transition. It's going to require a transition. And some of it can be big leaps or small baby steps. But like when you said it's difficult to have anything really flow if we're in that gunky, heavy energy. We would also say, right, I'm sure we both agree with this, that it serves us a purpose because when we're in that, we are going to move through it and beyond that. But do we want it to take a shorter period of time or a longer period of time? And I'm prime example, and I won't give specifics right now, but like sometimes I get immobilized. Sometimes I'm like, boom, I'll take action, like relative to being in a fear state. Because if we get, some people say, until I'm really pushed to the edge where I have to, really common with students and procrastination in school, and that motivates them. But we talk a lot more about going beyond motivation. Motivation like can be in that moment short term, but like connecting with our dreams, where our soul is guiding us to in co-creation with the universe. It's going to show us some opportunities that are not going to always feel comfortable. And they're going to be stuff we never could have imagined. And I'll just pass that over to you.
Definitely. You know, one of the things that was coming up for me as you were talking was really about that the saying that if we don't take care of self, then basically our body is going to make us rest, right? And that was coming up for me because when we talk about something that is a transition that is going to happen or needs to happen, if that is something that has been impacting us emotionally, mentally, physically, even, um, and we delay in making a change, right? We
Right.
let fear hold us back, or we let, just change hold us back.
Right.
Our body is going to say, okay, enough is enough.
Right.
Because, spirit really does have the best intention for us. And if we need to make a change because of something that is impacting us or something that is affecting us, spirit might lay us on the flat on our back because and kind of take the choice away from us because we've talked a lot about how we write this plan when we come in, right? And we write this contract, and that we still have free will, when we still have free choice. And we can choose not to listen, right? Like, absolutely. But sometimes our guides, our angels, higher powers step in a way that kind of forces us to make a choice because they're watching. It's almost like, when you're looking at your child and they're making a poor decision, and all you want to do is jump in and save them from that poor decision, right? Like, I can't imagine. I'm sure at times Esmeralda has been like with me, right? Like I'm sure she probably drinks. I know people have probably seen that meme where it says my spirit guide drinks, right? Like, she probably does at times. But I remember Esmeralda said to me not too terribly long ago, a few years ago, she said, you know, you can make this choice, or I'll make it so uncomfortable that you'll do the change, right? So that's kind of what I mean, is that yes, we do have free will, but our protectors are here to protect us from ourselves. That's why they are, right? And there are times when we don't make the best decisions for us and for our self-care and for our health, whether that's physical, mental, whatever. And again, it's I take that being a parent and watching your child make choices that are just breaking your heart. That's the same way our guides and in our higher powers feel
Right.
when they're watching us harm ourselves. And we may not think in the moment that we're doing something that's harmful, definitely not probably something our teenage child is doing.
Right.
But for them, because they can see the big picture, they can see the doors that could open for us. I'm sure they feel much the same way that we do when we're watching that happen. And maybe we're watching it happen with a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, a spouse. It doesn't have to be a child. Um, we can see something clearer than when we talk about a child, and they're making poor decisions about not doing homework. Let's use a really simple example. They're not doing their homework. We, as the parent, as the adult, can see beyond this one assignment, this two assignments, these 22 assignments, that this will be impactful for years to come, right? And so we're like, no, you don't understand. You've got to do this if you want to get to here. That's essentially what our spirit guides and our higher powers are doing when they stop us from harming ourselves. Because when we stay in something that is not meant for us, that is harming us, that is low vibing us, even low vibing us, right? Like when we stay in that, they're trying to help us realize that there's all these other choices that would serve us so much better. And so, I'm not trying to get people to turn their lives upside down with this conversation. But the truth is that if you are in a place, in a situational place, whether that be a relationship, a job, financial, whatever that is, right? If you're in a situational place and you just feel like you keep hitting a wall, that's the time when you have to reevaluate and say, why isn't this serving me? And what doors am I missing? So I'll pass it back to you.
Yes, beautiful. So, picking up right from there, let's say you're in that space, you begin to look at this, what Terry's sharing here. So, it will be some kind of process, and there's all kinds of ways to do it, but it's going to be coming back into groundedness, right? Groundedness in the body, because if the physical, we are all energy. But if we're in fear, the nervous system's ramped up. So then, and then really difficult, if not impossible. I rarely think anything's impossible, but let's just say it's not as much of a conducive environment to access spirit from freaking out. So helping your body get settled so you can access the higher wisdom, your soul, your higher self, your guides, whatever you believe in, could be different for everybody. And then it's amazing what happens with that. An opportunity, a phone call happens, you get a new idea, like all these things, and it may not happen that moment. So it's a practice. It's this practice of cultivating more and more connection and self-love. If we're in fear, we are not experiencing the energy of love for self or for much of anything. It's not that it's gone, but accessing that. And so there's lots of options. We've already mentioned some, and we're here to help people with what we offer, but there's no shortages of examples of how do I get grounded in my body? How do I do that? And it all depends on where you're at, and you figure out the nuances of what will help for you. Because it isn't like this, it's not, oh, snap my fingers. Maybe eventually, like depending on where we're at, right? But an immediate calming down the body from fear response, if it's been ramped up, we can be very impatient about, I know I sure have been, I can still have that come up.
Yeah.
My body just keeps reminding me, okay, I need to build into my day every single day, whatever it is, to remember all that I am. And it's kind of, it's really wonderful. I can speak from my experience, and I'm sure you referenced this, that it does, maybe easier isn't the right word, but I guess I can say for me, it does feel easier now to not forget all that I am. When my humanness and my mind and my fear, I'm in the forgetting.
Yeah.
But I more quickly come back now, and everyone, you all will too, in some level, in whatever timing is meant for you. And then I'll pass that over to you.
It's really funny. I felt this giant weight on me as you were talking just now, to share something that, gosh, I put behind me years and years ago. Okay. So everybody who is of our age or a little bit younger, remembers what happened in 2007, 2008 with the housing crisis, with the foreclosure crisis, with all of those things. And, um, I have never publicly talked about this, but I feel like I need to say it. And uh, at that time, I ended up having a house foreclosed on. I filed for bankruptcy. Um, and I couldn't, I can remember how, I mean, how horrible and how terrible that was. So I am not minimizing people's financial situations, and the fear that comes from that, right? At all. And I just felt like I needed to share that I faced this. This is something that, and it did, bankruptcy follows you it followed me for 10 years. Like, so, you're talking 2008. So it was not until like 2018, right, that it wasn't following me. And I didn't buy my next house from that house that I lost until 2018 is when I bought my first house after that happened. But in between that time is when I had no idea the doors that were going to open, right? Like that was a terrible thing to go through, and it was scary and I was fearful, but the doors that opened for me ended up being me finishing my education and me really coming to the place of I don't ever want to be in this situation before. It doesn't mean that again, but it doesn't mean I won't. I mean, I am not. Things happen. People get sick. Things happen, right? I'm not saying I will never be there again, but what I do know and what I can look back on now when I feel myself getting anxious is I can look back on I survived. I survived that. And I ended up all kinds of doors opened for me. And I finished my education and I went on and I've had this really beautiful life. And so the fact that we can face something like that, something terrible, and again, I'm not minimizing it, something terrible, losing literally everything physically, and having to start from ground zero, um, was probably one of the scariest things that I can ever imagine going through. And it was. But now, as I have woken more spiritually, as I've connected more spiritually, I'm able to know that yes, this can happen, but also know that there's going to be doors that open for me that I couldn't possibly have imagined. And no matter what I go through, no matter what the struggle is, there's purpose in it. Just like in that situation, I fully believe the purpose was for me to get my stuff together and finish my education, right? And that doesn't mean that people going through that's their journey, but that was for me, right? It opened a ton of doors for me. And I really wasn't going to do a personal story in this today. I was not. And I just felt this again, I've never publicly talked about this. But I really felt like it was something I needed to say. And so when I tell you that when I face even now face transitions, big transitions, big changes, there still is that piece of me that remembers that, but I choose to pull from that. Look at the doors that opened for me. So no matter what happens, look at the doors that opened for me. And so that's just what I want to encourage people that may be going through a transition that was not by choice, that everything is purposeful. We've talked about that before, to get us to where we need to launch.
Right.
And like I said, I am not minimizing, somebody who could be losing their housing, like I'm not minimizing that. It's terrible. It's scary. It's probably the worst thing I've ever been through. But knowing that there is a bigger purpose, is really important. And I think really when we get into that fear, right? Like, we've talked about that fear place, digging around for some of the things that we can use as personal examples
Mhm,
of how
mhm,
things worked out.
mhm,
Because maybe you haven't had that big of a loss like I did, losing a house and filing for bankruptcy.
mhm,
Maybe it's just I don't mean just, that's what I mean, but maybe it's something to do with not knowing how you're going to pay this bill or that bill this month,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Looking at, you know, 10 years ago, I
mhm.
was facing something else, that look at how that worked out
Right.
really can help reset our mind and pull us back out of that place of fear.
Mhm, mhm.
So I'll pass back to you before we close.
Lovely. Yes, I think whenever it comes in just naturally that we do share our experiences, I certainly have appreciated that over the years on my, particularly my spiritual journey. It brought me a lot, I learned so much, got me out of my head. And what was popping in to share was I also happened to have gone through a bankruptcy. I'm not trying to stick with your example, but that was one of the bigger things I went through. It wasn't related to a house. But what I recall from it was I had a lot of shame.
Mhm,
Mine was credit type of debt.
mhm,
And in order to, I had made a big move. We were living with family members, and of course, the goal as a married couple, and we wanted to get our own place. We literally couldn't find a way to do it without doing the bankruptcy. And so all of those emotions, for us, there was some fear, but it wasn't like we were at risk of not having a place to live, right? So
mhm,
here's some just different examples. Everybody's in a different place. But like you said, what came after? Like, we're not like, hey, everybody, go do bankruptcy. But yet it opened up a lot of doors. And fortunately for us, it didn't have anything to do with housing stuff. And yep, it tanks your credit for a little while. But then you everything can be either renewed, be brand new, be credit can always be built back up. And so but those painful emotions that are in the body, we have so much judgment on ourselves. I shouldn't be in this situation. Why am I in this blah 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 blah? And we go through this really challenging experience, and it does help us move through, especially when we look at the big spiritual perspective, into more opportunities than we ever could have imagined. And how I also was trying to say, spirit doesn't judge. The universe isn't judging, the human is judging.
mhm,
And because we live in these societies where it's like, oh, because we learn to feel shame. We don't control it. We don't sit there and go, I've learned to feel shame. It's like, and shame, I think, is one of the most painful emotions. There's other ones. It's not even emotion. It's a full, like, I'm no good. Like they say, guilt is I've done something wrong. And then shame is like, I'm inherently wrong, bad, or whatever.
mhm,
And it's something that is learned based on our perceptions of our environment, like what's everybody else doing. Not everyone, it's not every other day someone's filing bankruptcy. It happens a lot. I don't know what this, I know it probably happens a lot, especially, with people really struggling financially. So just remembering, like you said, and as we build a closure, and I'll pass it to you for closure, is the big picture, big picture. And I mean, becoming more connected and loving all that I am, mind, body, spirit, divine, all of it has literally pulled me out of my anxiety. It's not that I don't ever get anxious again or anxiety slash fear. It's just now when I get anxious, it's not oh no, what's wrong? What do I got to fix? It's, oh, here's my body. And a lot of times we get to, oh, well, I want to fix it. Now I'm like, I need to breathe into it. I need to use my whatever, my tools,
mhm.
and definitely connecting with the universe that I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Yep.
I, I want to honor the word that you used, the shame word, because yeah, I mean, again, how many years ago was that? Or 16 years ago for me, right? And you're right, I've never publicly talked about it, and I think the big word in that is the shame, right? And because the human judges something, not the spirit. And I think that when we get wrapped up in those human type judgments,
Mhm.
I'll use that word, those human type judgments,
Mhm.
um, that impacts us much more
Mhm.
than the actual event.
Right.
And I mean, really, like
It's true.
the actual event, it's the embarrassment, it's the
Mhm.
shame that happens because of the event that
Mhm.
holds us down in a place, right?
Mhm.
And like I said, I am not judging anybody who is facing anything or has faced anything. But for me, the shame of that has kept me from not, I've never even talked about it in a spiritual
Ah.
session. And I talk about stuff, like I talk about stuff.
Mhm.
And, I, yeah,
Mhm.
it's really important that
Mhm.
we understand that we all, and at any point, anyone, I don't care who they are,
Mhm.
something could happen. And, not to throw shade at anybody, but you think about the guy who had millions, who was like mm, not Coinbase, I'm talking about the money thing that wasn't really money. Oh my God, what was it?
Oh, are you talking about Bitcoin type stuff or?
Yes, Bitcoin.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you. I
Okay.
was like,
Gotcha. Right.
I mean, that guy had millions. Of course, he was
Yeah.
ripping people off, but he went from
Mhm.
that and like tumbled down. You talk about
Mhm.
somebody like who we've recently seen in the news who has been arrested for bad behavior, right? Like
Mhm.
you talk about those tumbles, like
Mhm.
those
Mhm.
tumbles can happen to anyone at any
Absolutely.
time for
Yes.
different reasons.
Yeah.
Just like if somebody had a heart attack tomorrow and um you know, they lost their ability to make the money that they've been making, right? Like these things happen.
Mhm.
That's why in our own journey, our own spiritual journey, not only about not judging ourselves, but
Mhm.
also understanding about not judging other people because
Mhm.
we don't know what
Right.
led to them being there.
Right.
And I mean, really, I think it's really important to understand that we are giving ourselves grace, we are giving
Mhm.
ourselves love, we are
Mhm.
wrapping ourselves up, but that we're also
Mhm.
not putting out that energy of
Yes.
judging someone else.
Right.
Um, it
Mhm.
really, I've seen lots over the years from social media where people will blame somebody because they couldn't pay their rent or they couldn't
Mhm.
buy groceries,
Mhm.
but how in the world do they know what the situation is?
Mhm.
And that person who's
Mhm.
blaming, it could have the
Yeah.
universe teaches us lessons too, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that person who's blaming somebody that they can't do those things,
Right.
maybe the next person on the universe's list to say, maybe you need to be humbled a little bit.
Because we're like
And
dehumanizing when we do that.
yes,
It's like a deflection. When I won't go way into this, obviously, but it's like judging someone else. The focus is off of you and
yep,
looking at them because it's not easy to be in the energy of people struggling and hurting. And what we've already said many times, like the different versions of, we need in this whole world, we need more love, not less. We
yep,
have all had hardships. Every single human has had some version of it, whether it's the same one you're judging, happen to be judging in that moment or not. And even in the whirlwind that we're living in, and just about in our election time in the United States, other countries, like just remembering the love. You don't have to agree or like everybody,
mm-hmm,
but if it
yep,
has to begin here, and then because it's only going to help,
yep,
you know. And so if we spread that energy, it's more and more likely, even though we may not see direct evidence from our own effort at it, is it all depends on what we believe. And
Mhm.
I totally believe I think anything is possible, even in the physical realm.
Yeah.
Just may not happen in the timing or way that we like, but certainly makes sense to me. For me to walk around in fear and frustration and anger all day, I'm going to admit that to everybody I come into
Mm.
contact. And so
Yes.
coming back into that loving
Yeah.
space,
Yeah.
addressing all of it, and sometimes I can't. And I honestly, I sometimes I just stay home for a day if I'm just like,
Mhm.
because I don't want to be like that. And that being said, if you do, we're not saying, oh, don't ever go out because
Right.
we are just human. We are
Mhm.
human. We're going to have good days and bad days, and it's okay. It's okay.
We are having a human experience for sure.
We are.
And, I think really understanding that what you need to do to take care of you, and if that's
Mhm.
staying home for a day, that's what that is, right? Or even if you're in this low vibe place, low energy place, if there is someone that you're connected to that is a high vibe
Mhm.
that's going to be self-care,
Yes.
then do that too. You know,
That
I
will lift
think
us
it's
up.
all about, yeah, it's all about that glow up, right?
Mhm.
However, we need to get to there.
Mhm. Mhm. Beautiful.
So,
Beautiful conversation.
yeah, thanks for today. And I think it was a beautiful conversation. Again, we never planned where we're going. I definitely did not plan to share that personal story. I can tell you that. But this is all about being authentic and true
Mhm.
and just complete and total honesty. And it was
Yes.
definitely laid on me to just say it.
Mhm.
And now I will make sure that I don't feel shame from that, right? Like it was part of the human experience.
Well, and I was thinking, and I didn't say this, but that everything comes in at right timing. So
Yeah.
for you, and we believe, and I'm not speaking specific that this is what it is or will be for you, but like, and maybe I think we've read some references that, but we are like healing and we're
Yep.
expanding and then healing these pieces, such a shame.
Mm-hmm.
And by
Yep.
sharing it, no doubt there's some kind of whatever
Yep.
impact, shift, more love for self is definitely going to be in the mix relative anytime we face anything, because it's a big thing to share something that has been held within for so long for reasons, because shame wants to keep us, we're not going to share it because we're feeling it, then we're going to believe others are going to see us that way. But my guess is you wouldn't have shared it if you weren't ready. I mean, you wouldn't have. If you were
Yes.
like stuck in fear and paralyzed, you wouldn't have shared it. Like, so it's all a process, always a bigger picture. So it's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I just love that.
And thank you for sharing too, Stacy. And these are just for everybody watching. We have not even shared this with each other, so
That's
like
right.
really.
That's right.
And so I think that it is.
Mhm.
Today was very powerful, and I'm
Yes.
glad that you joined us. And we can't wait till next time.
Yes. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye
Bye
for now.
bye.